Hello everybody, welcome back to another War of the Visions video. Today we're asking, should you pull on Little Leela and Rairyuu, the Halloween versions? So these are some surprise units that we got this week after they just came out in Japan, and we're getting them way ahead of schedule. So the idea is that they might be a little power creeped, but we'll see if that's really true while we look at their kits, and we'll make the decision on whether or not you should pull for them with your hard-earned Visior. Let's get into it. First up is going to be our Halloween version of Rairyuu, and he has a brand new job called Rune Knight, which is kind of like a mix between Soldier and Spellblade, but he's also going to have half his starting max AP, so like a red mage, and then he's going to base all of his skills off of the magic stat for the most part. So definitely a very unique job, very cool. So let's take a look at it. So Rairyuu is an earth element. He's got the Rune Knight, he's got black mage, and then paladin, which is very interesting. And then he uses swords, hat, cloth, accessory, so pretty standard. Taking a look at his stats, he's got very nice HP for a mage type unit, a DPS type unit. You can see starting AP is 67, which is really nice for the for using any of his AP skills. And then he's not attack focused, so his attack's super low. He's actually got really high magic, and if you are familiar with like average stats for mages, if you look at your Medina and your Kilfei and your Ildira, they all sit around 300. So the fact that he's at 338, that's pretty impressive. However, you have to consider that he's using a sword, whereas these other units, they get to use staffs, and staffs of the magic type are going to give way more magic stat. So they have to make up for that somewhere, and especially true if his sub job is black mage. If his magic stat couldn't get that high, then there wouldn't really be a point of giving him that sub job. He wouldn't use it nearly as much. But then you can take a look at his dexterity, which is just average, and his luck is above average. So he's got good luck, and he's got okay agility. It's not great. He also gets a little bit of defense from the paladin sub job. And then he gets 20% magic up from his board stats. So that means his magic is going to be on par with a lot of the mages that we see. Okay, so we're going to take a look through his entire kit, and then we'll make some comparisons, because there's definitely some interesting ones that we have to think about, including what would have been our first Rune Knight, Howlett. He's coming out in maybe 3 weeks to a month, and you want to decide on if you should go for Rairyuu, or maybe you should be just waiting for the original Rune Knight. So his resistances, it's all pretty standard. He doesn't have good slash resist, which is the biggest thing that pops out. He does have good magic resist. And then he has 50% charm resist, which is always nice. He has a TMR that's pretty interesting, and this is going to be another new thing for us. So Japan has stat stacking and we don't, so this TMR has magic on it, which is useless for most units right now, but it won't be later on. So we're going to start seeing different things like vision cards and accessories and all sorts of equipment have more stats than they used to, but we just can't really take advantage of it yet. But this is a really cool TMR because it also gives auto revive, but I think only mages can equip it, so it's very limited. But you can just think about like your squishiest mage having auto life coming back after dying. That sounds pretty good. Rairyuu is also having a new trend of master ability that again is becoming commonplace in Japan, but we have not seen yet, which is master abilities that buff other people. So his is based on earth allies, so they get more earth attack and HP up for the earth allies in the party, and then he also gives himself slash resistance penetration. And I'm going to correct myself from last time I talked about resist presentation or penetration. I talked about defense penetration. I said it was a flat reduction. It's actually a percent. So this will, when he attacks, he's going to ignore 20% of somebody's slash resist. And the easiest way to think about that is if they had 100 slash resist, then he would ignore 20 of it. Next up is the support skills, and we'll have 2 new Rune Knight skills to take a look at. So first is Rune of Sharp Earth, and that is just a huge attack boost for himself, and then a decrease in wind resistance. So it's a double-edged sword, which is kind of the theme of Rune Knights. And then Magic Up from Black Mage is certainly appetizing. And then another new skill, Sharp Mind, that increases your spirit penetration for self, and then increase accuracy. And then you get Holy Knight's protection. So you've got a lot to work with. All 4 of these are good. And obviously it depends on what party you're hunting in guild battle or arena. It depends on which one you're gonna pick. But your general all use ones are probably just gonna be Rune of Sharp Earth and Magic Up to be able to just do a lot of damage. But then that Sharp Mind might come in for certain tanks if you're going against a magic tank. And then for counter abilities, again, we have a new one. Energy Conversion is like auto refresh from Sid, as far as I'm aware. I mean, I don't have a Sid, so who really knows? It gives you some AP when you take damage, though, and that's really awesome. I should have looked at the comparison to see how similar it was, and then otherwise, Paladin's Guard and Magic Counter, so good, all good counter abilities. Okay, taking a look at the main job and the sub job. There's a lot of familiar skills here. So we've got from the Spell Blade, the Stone Blade, and then the Stone God Blade. From the Soldier, we have Hazard Slash, but it scales off of magic. And then we have the Drain Evoke, which is like the main hallmark of these Rune Knights. So it's going to absorb HP, it's going to increase damage, magic stat on yourself by 100% for 1 turn, and then it's also going to give you slash resistance penetration. So with his master ability, he goes up to 60 for 1 turn only. So you really want to hit the correct person with an ability the next turn. And then there's Heaven Sword, which is just another quick sword that it's better against units with float. That's so random to me. And then on the sub job, you get Hazard Spell, which is like the attack version on the Soldier, but it's for magic, and then a decrease in earth resistance, which could be really fun for raids. But these are only 2 skills, and they're both TP skills. I think that you're probably not going to use this sub. It doesn't give you a whole lot, but it does give you TP skills. That's pretty important. Okay, so taking a look at Black Mage, which again, so Black Mage isn't going to give you really many TP skills you can use in on the way to an enemy. So that is something to consider, that if AP production is important, then you might need to have that counter on, and you might need to have something like Jesus Bells. But otherwise, he gets the full suite of Black Mage stuff, except for he doesn't get Stone Ga, which is our most powerful AoE, but he does get Flare. So this is pretty solid. These are all good skills. And then Paladin. Paladin's really interesting because all of these skills scale off of attack. So you don't want to use Blade Bash necessarily. You turn off Divine Grace and Saintly Healing. Although, I mean, Divine Grace is actually kind of interesting if you were not using him as a tank. But to be honest, you're really going to want this sub job for Immortal Spirit. Even if he's not tanking, it's just so appetizing. But he could tank. He has Taunting Blade, and one of the cool things is he can use it right off the bat because he starts with half AP. It means that Taunting Blade is an immediate option for him. And then also just having Sentinel. So this having access to Paladin is going to give you a lot of defensive skills and TP skills, which is very important for battling. And when you look at this loadout, you can actually think about, well, he's got this Drain ability that he uses, and then he's got Taunting ability, he's got Sentinel and Immortal Spirit. Maybe he can be some kind of wonky self-damaging heal yourself tank that is just built around like trying to heal himself before he dies with his that evoke drain thing that he has. And if you're going to run that route, then you'll probably have the Paladin passive on as well for the extra 12 defense and some HP. His Limit Burst is pretty interesting because it has a super high chance of inflicting poison on the enemy, and then just doing kind of a so-so amount of damage. But again, this is a red mage type unit where you start with half your AP, so he can immediately use this. It's an AoE attack, it does respectable damage and then puts poison on them. This is really good if it hits a tank. I really like this. This is kind of cool. You have to see how it is in practical use. It might be something you turn off depending on, I mean, like to lose all of that AP right off the bat, that is questionable. So I think that this is going to be a unit that really, really likes Ziza's bells. Okay, so comparisons. We're going to actually compare him to Howlett, who has not actually come out yet in Global. And we'll take a look at the stats, and then we're also going to take a look at their master abilities side by side. So you can see Rairyuu has a little bit more HP, and then he has defense because he has the Paladin sub. And then Howlett's going to have a little bit more magic because Howlett actually has red mage and white mage sub, so he's got full magic on his kit, and Rairyuu has a mix of magic and defense on his kit, and you can see that kind of reflected in the stats. Otherwise, they're fairly comparable. Rairyuu gets more luck, Howlett gets more agility, and their kits, their Rune Knight skills are identical. They get all the same skills. So the main thing to think about is their elements, their sub jobs, etc. So looking at the master abilities, when you look at Rairyuu, you get the earth bonus and you get that attack slash attack resistance penetration. When you look at Howlett, you get even more magic and you also get spirit penetration. Now, you'll remember that both the Rune Knights have the passive for spirit penetration already, and both have a skill that grants slash attack penetration. So both of them have access to both abilities, but they each get one of them kind of in-tuned into their kit because it's part of their master ability as well. So what it comes down to here is the sub jobs really for me, and then a little bit on the element. So Rairyuu is a huge plus because he's earth, and then, you know, Sids are going to have a little bit more trouble dealing damage to him. And then we also have a lot of ice units, which are really going to be strong against Howlett, who is wind. But I really like Howlett's sub-jobs. So he has the red mage, and the main thing there is you got your JT, jamming thrust, and then you have white mage for a whole bunch of healing, which can be really, really solid. To have a unit that can also be a healer, that's incredible. So my personal opinion is, if you were set on getting a Rune Knight, I would actually wait for Howlett, but Rairyuu is also a solid choice. It's a very, very cool job. The other thing is, if you have an Earth party, if you're building an Earth party, then by all means, Rairyuu's the guy to go for. So we're going to take a look at Ramza, and the reason I'm doing this is because, again, it's kind of like this Vanguard class that's going to be up in the mix. They're using swords. So Ramza also uses swords, and they all use slashing attacks, which is really important, except for depending on what sub job you use, right? So if you use Black Mage with Rairyuu, he's not going to be needing slash attack as much. But Ramza, you can see that the magic drop off is pretty significant there compared to these other guys. There's definitely, they want Spellblades doing a little bit less damage, being a little bit more tanky, and Rairyuu and Howlett are going to be definitely a higher DPS type unit. And then just to compare to a mage, I'm going to slap Medina right over Ramza there. You can see him peeking over her shoulder, and you can just compare some stats there if you want. So you can see she's got lower magic, but she has the magic passive up, and she also has the ability to put on staffs. So there's definitely an ability to stack more magic on a mage than there is on a Rune Knight. Next up is Little Leela, and she's going to be very familiar to a lot of you because she is a main job arithmetician, and we just got Ildira. They're pretty much identical in main kits. I think, no, they are identical in main kits. So we'll take a look at what the differences are for them. So you're going to see Arithmetician main job, White Mage sub job, and Ninja sub job, which is very interesting. If you built a Plat Mace, then good news, you can use it on her as well, and then pretty standard for equipment. Taking a look at the stats, very typical so far in the top, so HP, TP, AP, that's all fine. Magic is okay, but she's not going to have magic passive up, which is going to be a big difference between her and most casters, is that she doesn't actually get that 30% increase in magic from the passive ability, but she has high luck and she has super high agility, so that is cause for celebration, because maybe we've got another evade unit on our hands, and you also have ninja for Utsemi, so that's quite interesting. She will get some magic from her board stat as well. Okay, so let's take a look at her kit, and you've got your ice weakness and your earth resistance, and then weak to everything but magic. She's definitely not going to be as durable as some of the other mages, but that's just fine. She has that don't act resist too. I like that a lot. And her TMR is an accessory that gives agility, kind of reminds me of Ayaka, but then has a very different skill. So this skill will increase your magic and accuracy by a boatload at the expense of decreasing your defense and spirit by 10, and that can go negative with the decrease, so be careful with that. And then master ability, very similar, or it's the same as Rairyuu, except we're going to get the HP and attack for the wind allies, and then evasion rate for self, and that's really cool. So there is another little hint that this could be an evade mage. Okay, so the support skills, everything is familiar here. For your calculator job, you're going to have your changes from height 3 to 2 and level 4 to 3, and then March of the Saints is kind of random. So really, you got Shadowrunner and Shukuchi, which are both really, really solid. So you do have some tough decision making to be done here. And then you have damage distribution, regenerator, and poison barb. So really, I feel like damage distribution is the best here, because she's not going to take many hits at all. So if she survives, I'd rather deal some damage back than regenerate, because like her max HP is one-shottable anyway. So I like the idea of that damage distribution being your counter. Okay, and then looking at the main skills, it's all the same as Ildira. If you've watched that video, if you've used her, then you know exactly what she's all about. Your height-based skills, your AoE healing, your AoE damage, the height 3 holy, which is not instant or not a guaranteed hit. This is all very typical, and this is a really good main kit. The sub kit has a little bit more utility, so you've got disable, you got CT average, and then you've got another AoE spell, which you don't need because you already have so many, and you have so many uses on your other spells. The thing with the CT average and height 3 disable is that she won't use them in auto unless she's completely out of AP. So this is more for use in manual PvP. Okay, so White Mage, this is where she becomes very, very interesting, and possibly competition, like a bigger competition for Ayaka than Ildira is, because she gets more heals and she gets, most importantly, full life. So you can see the full kit here. It's really simple, but the two big standouts are Curata for a really nice big heal, and then full life for obviously for coming back in games is a really big deal. And then Ninja, you don't really use it. I don't see you using any of these skills except for Utsemi, which is your evasion skill. So maybe you have that set up. Her main kit is good enough to not need abilities from the sub kit, although having the White Mage skills are obviously a really big deal. So I would probably just roll with White Mage. And then her limit burst is very, very cool. It does a lot of damage, and then it also is a calculator type skill. It increases the multiple or the modifier if you have a level multiple of 3, and then it also dispels debuffs and puts haste, and I'm assuming that is going to be on self, so that's very cool as well. Okay, so comparisons. Obviously, Ildira is the main one, and they compare very favorably. You can see that like their stats are just very similar, except they trade dexterity for luck. The agility is a little bit higher on little Leela, but then you get the spirit and the spellblade utility for Ildira, whereas Leela gets the healing and speed of the ninja and the White Mage. So there's just a bit of a trade-off, but otherwise they're very, very similar. And then Ayaka is the other comparison that I wanted to make, just because they're super similar in their roles. Ayaka has an instant AoE heal that is also gives you stop protection, but little Leela just gets a bunch of those AoE heals. And they're not going to be as good as Ayaka's special, but then she can use them multiple times. She can use Curata for focused healing. She can use full life, and then she's just going to be doing way more damage than Ayaka ever could, and way more AoE than Ayaka ever could. So I think that you might actually see people use Little Leela Halloween version over Ayaka. I think that would be very cool. Okay, so the final question again is, should you pull? And then I'll always say that these are subjective decisions. It totally depends on your account and what you're saving for. So for example, with Little Leela, I think she's probably going to improve most accounts, but if you already have Ayaka, and you're really happy with Ayaka and you want to save up for a new unit, you don't necessarily need Little Leela. If you already have Ildira, then you don't really need Little Leela, but she's definitely going to be really good for your account either way, but she could be skippable. And then with Rairyuu, I'm really split on him. I think that we should wait for Howlett, but if you have Earth units, if you really want to Rune Knight now, if you're interested in trying out his tankiness, that could be very cool. But otherwise, I think you're honestly better off waiting for Howlett. All right, so that's going to be it, and I hope that the video was useful to you. And if it was, you can show that in the comments, and we'll get to chatting on Discord as well. And we'll see you next time.